So Sophie Cunningham said something today that I find very, very interesting. Said something today that I found very, very interesting. And it was after all the stuff with Myisha Hines. And by the way, again, if you guys are interested, I know obviously like it's probably not for most people's liking, but if you guys do find the L enforcers kind of cool, that the fact the Indiana Fever have their enforcers, link will be in the description to the McTalk Soup Shop, where for literally costs we have a enforcers t-shirt. An enforcers t-shirt, which is cheaper than anything else. Again, this was $2.50 profit. This was premium. This was like a $3 profit. This is a $0 profit. So Myisha Hines snapped at Alyssa Thomas. And if you guys didn't see from Sophie Cunningham, this is what Sophie went and said. She came out after the game and said this. I think if you heard what people called Myisha, then you probably would have been thrown out too. And how she reacted was valid. Like I said, all that happened, we got the dub, we got to dial in and be better on Wednesday. I'm going to be honest. If things flip the opposite way, and a player on the Fever, a player said, oh, look, after what this player on the Fever said to me, the crash out was justified. The Fever player would be suspended and whatever tech would be rescinded. You just know it would. You genuinely just know it would. And it's one of those things where I wonder what Alyssa Thomas said. Because Alyssa Thomas is, I can't stand her. I can't stand her. And you've got this person, we all know we call this who don't side with their own people. It's like, could you imagine? This is team sports. And by the way, if Alyssa Thomas said that, for what? For playing on a team. And by the way, is this person not one of these people that like, oh yeah, shout out New York Liberty for, paying for this person who refers to Myisha Hines, a player in the league, as the last four letters of the animal recruit. Shout out to New York Liberty for, going out of their way to highlight them at a game. Shout out New York Liberty. Great organization and all that. But again, this is the pre-Caitlin Clark, so that was the whole WNBA. But yeah, look, it is one of those things that it doesn't really matter what Alyssa Thomas said. Like, if it turns out that Alyssa Thomas said that, you better believe it's the opposite way. If it's the opposite way that any player in the Fever team said any sort of derogatory term towards Myisha, towards another player, they'd be suspended for the year. They would be. Like, you know they would be. And again, very well. This very well could be, like, this is just people making up stuff online. So obviously, nobody knows that exact thing, that exact name was what Alyssa Thomas said to Myisha Hines. But if it was, it should be a suspension by Myisha. It should be a suspension for Alyssa Thomas. I know the WNBA are scared as fuck of Alyssa Thomas. Like, they're scared of her. Don't know why. Refs are scared of her. League is scared of her. No idea why. But if we're going to be real here, if that four-letter word was used by Alyssa Thomas towards another player, she should be suspended. Again, we don't know if it is. But people are speaking about it like it was fact, and if that is the case, Clark called ATBG. Yeah, she did from the bench to another teammate. Did not say it to her face. I wonder if people tweeting also calling out their own fan base for making disgusting comments. Like, fan bases for making disgusting comments versus Alyssa Thomas versus a player. Like, I think it is very different. Could you imagine just any sort of comment, regardless of like personal shots? I say the statement. I think Stephanie White's not a very good coach and is a horrible coach for Caitlin Clark. Any player makes that statement. Like, you can't make that. No, a player can't make that statement. That's just a general example. There's shit you can't say. There's shit you shouldn't say anyway. But like, obviously we know when it comes from a player. When it comes from a player, it's 1,000 times worse. Like, it means 1,000 times more. And if it turns out that that is what Alyssa Thomas said, and I think there needs to be an investigation to what Alyssa Thomas said after Sophie Cunningham's talk there. Like, there has to be. Because, again, if it was the opposite way around, even if there was nothing, from a random fan, there would be an investigation to a team. But this is an accusation from a player that another player has said something to set them off. And it said, and not what they said, what they called her. The word, I think you heard what people call Myisha, you probably would have been thrown out too. And again, it's the Indiana crowd. The only people that said anything to Myisha was Alyssa Thomas. Maybe Luana Bonner. So, look, we all know in this scenario here that if this flipped, and even if someone in the crowd said something towards Alyssa Thomas that she didn't like there'd be an investigation. There absolutely would be. If she heard anything, she would stop. If she heard anything that was cross the line, she'd probably stop the damn game. She'd probably get the whole game stopped. And again, we don't know what was said, but this accusation being made by a player means if it's extreme enough to crash out like that, means it must have been bad. So at the end of the day, league investigate. And if it turned out that that 4-letter word was used by Alyssa Thomas towards Myisha Hines Allen, there should be it is a derogatory term for a person of her race. That if that's used on a court, just because you don't like as a league, you don't like the Indiana Fever, or as old fans, as a group of old fans, you don't like any player that doesn't try to fight Caitlin Clark on a daily basis. They all hated Luana Bonner when she joined Indiana. They loved Luana Bonner when she left Indiana. Let's be real about that. If that is I know as a league you don't like the Fever, but we got to be real here. No space for hate. If it turns out, and it's a big if, if it turns out another player used a racial-based derogatory term towards another player, in the derogatory way, there has to be a suspension and not a short suspension. Because this is not what if Caitlin Clark said that? Because let's be real. If Caitlin Clark used derogatory term, we know what's happening. If a white player uses derogatory term towards a person of color, they're out of the league. We know that, and that's that is what it is. But I'm being real. There has to be something. So if what people are accusing Alyssa Thomas of saying is what she said, something has to be done. And again, with this accusation of Sophie Cunningham, an investigation should be done into Alyssa Thomas into finding out what she said. And then once it's found out what she said, the league make a decision based on that. But to just go and say and do nothing, because if the shoe was on the other feet, there would be a public investigation and a we call BS post from the PA. We know there would be.